It is my pleasure now to introduce our keynote speaker for the day. And he's going to talk to us about generations. I'm lucky enough that last week my parents celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. And my 9-year-old my 9-year-old nephew was very interested in the fact that Grandma and Grandpa are rather old in his world. And he asked me, he said, "Uncle Paul, when were you born?" And I said, "I was born in 1968. And he looked aghast and he said, "You were born in the 60s? Yes, I was. And Scott Zimmer is here to talk to us about generations. He has 12 years of public speaking experience. He has a unique perspective and brings insight, humor, and data to this discussion of generations. As one of Bridgeworks' generational experts and resident Gen Xer, Scott's keynotes clearly illustrate the stress points between these generations and provide clear solutions to help relieve tension and encourage better understanding. Would you please welcome Scott Zimmer.
We can dance if we want to. We can leave your friends behind. Because your friends don't dance. And if they don't
safety dance?
Well, they're no friends of mine.
I don't know if it'll come as a great shock to anybody, but we are running a little bit behind. So while I could talk about generations for hours, I only have a few minutes. So I'm going to get right to it. First of all, thank you for having me here today. Second of all, I want to tell you, the thing I love most about working for Bridgeworks and studying generations for a living is that wherever I'm giving a speech, whatever the industry might be, whether it's finance, whether it's hospitality, whether it's transportation, whether I'm speaking to a room full of corporate CEOs or 19-year-old interns, the topic of generations is something that affects everybody. It applies to each and every one of us because at one point or another, we've all experienced some kind of generational clash point, if you will. I study this for a living and I'm no exception. Let me give you an example. My niece recently lost her first tooth. And she's adorable. Her name's Ellie. So I'm asking my brother about it because I don't have kids. So I was just asking him, what's changed since we were young? How much is the tooth fairy leaving these days? I remember getting a quarter or sometimes a 50-cent piece. If you have no idea what a 50-cent piece is, it's because I might be a little old myself. And do you have to give her NyQuil so she doesn't wake up? What time do you go into a room? How does this work? I was just being nosy. And he gave me one of those looks. But he did tell me, he's like, "I think tooth fairy time might be coming to an end at our house." And I'm like, "Boy, what happened? You just got started." He's like, "Ellie found out the tooth fairy isn't real." And I thought to myself, who told her? And he said, she Googled it. Thank you for that reaction, because my mouth was just hanging open. I thought to myself, not really an option when I was a 5-year-old. Generational gaps like that, in the personal realm of our lives, it's kind of funny, let's be honest. On the professional front, it's frustrating when we encounter those generational clash points. I've spoken to many people in the transportation industry about their thoughts and their concerns and what's on their mind in terms of the topic of generation. And you can probably guess the topic that kept coming up over and over again: millennials. Trying to understand this new generation, how they think. Why don't they own cars? Why are they more apt to leave a job within a year? Why can't we get them to stay? These companies spend so much time and money recruiting, trying to retain, motivate, and engage this generation, and they don't stick around the way they used to. And at the end of the day, it affects the bottom line. And that's something I try and stress about this topic. A lot of people think, generations, it's a fluffy topic. It's a bottom line issue. And like I said, what works for really capturing one generation's attention, what motivates them, engages them, could be the very thing that turns another generation off. And unfortunately, when we encounter these generational clash points, be it in the marketplace or in the workplace, right away we go to a negative spot in our minds. We stereotype, we think, they're a bunch of entitled brats, or we think, come on, get with the times, Grandpa. When at the end of the day, we don't think about how we can come together to get the job done, and maybe even have a good time doing it, like the two do so well in this next commercial.
Stuart, can I see you in my office, please?
That kid is sick.
That hinge is squeaky.
Very sick.
Stuart, get in here. Sure thing, Mr. P.
Stuart, I just opened my Ameritrade account.
Let's light this candle. Let's go to Ameritrade.com. It's easier than falling in love. What do you feel like buying today, Mr. P?
Kmart.
So research it. All this stuff is provided for you free of charge.
No cost.
Yeah, that's synonymous with free.
Looks like a good stock.
Let's buy.
Let's buy 100 shares.
All right, click it in there.
Okay.
How about 500?
100, Stuart.
You feel the excitement? You're about to buy a stock
Okay.
online.
Oh! Fabulous. I'm thrilled. What did that cost me?
$8, my man.
Mike Broker charges me $200 for this
Riding the
trade.
wave of the future, my man. I gotta get a soda.
All right.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Wait a
P.
minute.
I'm having a party on Saturday night if you really want to go.
I'm going to try and get there. Thank
Happy
you, Stuart.
trading.
Thank you.
Rock on.
All right, Stuart.
What I love about that classic commercial is that it shows two very clearly distinct generations who should have nothing in common, coming together with a common goal and getting the job done and actually enjoying themselves in the process. And that Ameritrade commercial in the late 90s won them a lot of awards and a lot of accolades for portraying the generations that way, because you don't see that too often. So let's talk a little bit about who are these different generations in the workplace. There we go. Because a lot of people ask me, what generation do I belong to? I'm this age, I was born then. Here are the 4 different generations that I study at Bridgework. The first generation is the traditionalist generation, otherwise known as the greatest generation. They were born prior to 1946, and there was a group of about 75 million traditionalists in our country. Up next, we have the baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964, big group of 80 million. And I have to ask, just show of hands, how many boomers do I have here today? Wow, there's a lot of you. I'm actually surprised. Usually when I ask for a show of hands with boomers, they clap. Boomers are just very excited to be boomers. And you always have the extra sort of roll their eyes like, we get it, boomers, you're awesome. Which brings me to my generation, which is Generation X. We're a very small generation. We're 20 million less than boomers. We're born between 1965 and 1979. Where are my Gen Xers at? I see what you flipped it. I see what you did. That's good. Anybody want to venture a guess, by the way? Why are we so fewer than the boomers? 20 million less than the boomers and the millennials. There's a little invention during our formative years. I think I heard it. Everybody whispers it. Everyone's like, birth control. It's contraceptive. It's okay. It's not a swear word. They teach us about that in junior high. Last but not least, though, millennials, born between 1980 and 1995. Big generation. With immigration, 1 in 4 millennials in our country is Hispanic. They've now exceeded the baby boomers. Show of hands, who's a millennial in the house? All right, what's up, millennials? Usually millennials cower at a table in the corner. Like, don't look at me. Now, I want to make something clear. The heart of studying generations isn't just in dates, and it's not in birth years and ages. The heart of generations is really about our formative years. What was going on in the world when we were growing up, when we were coming of age? If you're somebody who was born during the Great Depression, you probably have different values and different traits than somebody who grew up during the Watergate scandal. And you might view the world a little bit differently than somebody who grew up during 9/11. What's going on in the world when we're coming of age, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, when we're going through brain development, when we're coming to terms with the world around us, that creates shared experiences, shared traits, and shared values. And granted, we're all individual people. It's the difference between sociology and psychology, but at the end of the day, those shared traits that we develop in our formative years, we carry them with us throughout our lives right into the workplace. And that's what I want to talk about with you today. Just really quickly, I don't have much time. I want to leave you with something that you can take back with you to the office tomorrow, so you can sound really smart in terms of generations. I want to give you a stat. First of all, by the year 2020, millennials are going to comprise 50% of the American workforce. That usually scares people. We're still trying to figure them out. The oldest millennials are like 34. They've been in the workplace for a long time, and yet so many of us are still scratching our heads about how do we motivate them, keep them, engage them? How do we reach them as consumers? But at the end of the day, you can Google that. There's a lot of stats out there, and you can just Google them. I want to talk about the heart of who millennials are. So let's take a quick look at the formative years of the millennial generation. What was going on for this generation when they were coming of age? First of all, you can't talk about millennials and not talk about technology. Technology changed the way this generation does everything. How they communicate with each other, how they buy, how they sell, how they travel. It changed everything. But moreover, what it did, it changed the rate of change for this generation. Let me give you an example. When millennials were kids, they remember playing on these. The old Macintosh computers. This one here, this Macintosh, has a total memory of 128 kilobytes. I don't know if you're a techie, crowd. It's about the size of one tweet on Twitter today. Playing a little Oregon Trail. By the time they graduated and they were in college, a lot of millennials remember getting one of these. The first generation iPhone. This thing could download ringtones 10 times the size of that Macintosh computer. Such change in such a short amount of time. This is a generation that is a lot more comfortable with change than boomers and a lot more comfortable with change than Xers. They were waiting for the iPhone 4, the iPhone 5, the iPhone 6, it's coming out. PlayStation 2, 3, 4, MySpace, Friendster, Facebook, they're on an upgrade scale. So when they're in the workplace, they're okay with change. They're comfortable with change because they've been dealing with it since they were young. Another thing I want to point out really quick in terms of millennials in their formative years, it's how they experienced violence. It seems like such a shift from talking about technology, but how they experience violence is really important in understanding who a millennial is, as a coworker, as a subordinate, as a boss, and as a consumer. Because every generation's experienced violence. Boomers, traditionalists, Xers, but this is a generation that saw a lot of violence, not oceans away, not on TV. They saw it here. They were in their formative years during 9/11, and that shook things up big time. This is the generation that they were in their formative years during Columbine, Virginia Tech. Now violence was happening in the desks next to them. We talk to millennials in focus groups who say back then they could feel figuratively and literally their parents holding them tighter, trying to keep them safe. We study things at Bridgeworks like public education funding, for example. And during the formative years of millennials, there was a huge amount of money allotted to public schools for things like guidance counselors. And for me as a Gen Xer, guidance counselors were there really to help you with your college transcript and your class schedule. That's not what they were doing anymore. They were there to encourage millennials to talk, to speak up. They really encouraged them to share how they were feeling. And that was with teachers, coaches, but nobody more so than with mom and dad. Millennials grew very, very close with mom and dad, as showcased in this next commercial right here.
No, I'm fine. Can we do this again tomorrow?
Anytime.
I miss having my own room.
What do you think?
That's a little better.
A little better?
Yeah. This is my boyfriend, Jamie. I don't feel at home here. I feel homesick. Love you. Don't stay up too late, okay?
Hi, alligator.
See you later, alligator. In a wild crocodile.
In a wild crocodile. I remember that.
I found that clip, and one of my colleagues said, "You cannot show that in a presentation. People are going to start crying." But I thought it just does such a good job of showing that closeness that millennials had with mom and dad. You talk to Xers, this is an actual survey that was taken. Who was your idol growing up? The number one answer, Michael Jordan. Remember what a thing Michael Jordan was, though, number 23? You ask millennials, who was your hero growing up? It was mom and dad. All right, they're going to grab a cane and yank me off stage if I don't wrap this up, but I do want to leave you with one tip that you can bring back with you. So now that we know more about millennials, what can you do with it? We talk to senior leaders. Oh, by the way, collaborative, tech-savvy, globally diverse, and socially accepting. Those are the top traits of the millennial generation. But one of the number one questions I get asked from senior leaders is, how come, it's all about motivation. How come what motivated me when I was coming up in the workforce does not seem to motivate them? And think about it, if you're a baby boomer, if you're a Gen Xer, what motivated us when we were coming into the workplace? At the end of the day, it really had a lot to do with that. You know, boomers, they were starting families a lot earlier than millennials are. That was your early 20s. Now millennials aren't getting married till their early 30s. So supporting your family. For me as an Xer, I didn't want to be a boomerang kid. You know, that kid who moved back home after college. I don't think mom and dad wanted me to be one either. There was a sewing machine and an elliptical in my old bedroom within like a month of me leaving. Now, millennials tell me they go home and it's like their room is a shrine. The ribbons, the trophies, some of them for like 6th place swimming, by the way. A lot of participation awards, all intact. Honey, you come home anytime you want to. They've got a little bit more of that cushion. They're not buying cars. They're not buying homes at the same rate that Xers and boomers were. They have a little bit of cushion to fall back on. So it's not all about the money with millennials. This is from PricewaterhouseCoopers. Millennials are unwilling to commit to making their work lives an exclusive priority, even with the promise of substantial compensation down the road. So if money isn't the main motivator with this generation, what is? For millennials, it's all about meaning. They want meaning in their work. They want meaning in the companies that they support. They want to make a difference. With all the violence they experienced growing up, with mom and dad kind of looking at retirement themselves and saying, you know what? If you're going to work as hard as I did for as long as I did, make it count. Do something that's important to you and do something that matters. So we got millennials coming in on day one, wanting to know, how do I matter to this company and how does this company matter to the world? And it's not, boomers are like, I care about things too, and Xers do as well, but we kind of waited till we ascended into more meaningful roles. Not millennials, they want to know right away, look, how am I making a difference here? So that's what I'm going to leave you with this last thought. Find a way to connect the dots for the millennials in your company, the millennial consumer you're trying to reach. How do you matter? You might think transportation, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe some of you think this is a really sexy, cool industry. Maybe some of you are like, it's transportation. You know, it's not. Let me tell you something. What you do is meaningful. What you do matters. So much of our lives, think about it, so much of our lives is spent getting from point A to point B. What you do matters. Find a way to showcase that to the millennials in your orbit, and I guarantee that's going to create that connection right there. And I do want to say this. Everybody at Mobility 21, thank you for having me here today. I want to thank especially Jenny for all your hard work putting this together. And I just want to leave you with this one final thought. And if you do have questions, you can come talk to me afterwards, or you can visit generations.com. But I want to say, when it comes to generations, boomers, Xers, millennials, it's not about right or wrong. It's not about better or worse. It is about understanding that each and every one of us brings a different perception and perspective to the table. And it's finding out, all right, now that I know a little bit about them, how can we come together and create a difference? And really, what this is all about today, the transportation industry, any industry, it's all about people. So thank you all very much for having me. I really appreciate it.